Hey friends, today we are working on this good old Suzuki GS800 again. Actually, we're just doing that the other day, but anyway, it's a new day, new video. So, just doing a carb clean today. I gotta say, this is one of the easiest bikes I've ever had to work on. Grab my paper towel real quick, it was taken off. But anyway, look at that. Plugs are angled in a way that they're easy access, both sides. That's awesome. Of course, you start by taking off your gas tank. You're gonna have these two screws. Somebody's messed with everything on this bike, so I don't know what the original screws would have been or any of that stuff, to be honest. But that, of course, pops in there like that. You're gonna have this under here. Make sure it's back in there before you put the tank on. You want to start with an empty tank, ideally. Otherwise, you got to drain it out first. And of course, if you do that, you're gonna have to set your petcock on prime. And for some reason, which would be right here, PRI, for some reason I couldn't get this fuel level sensor wires off. I don't know where the end of the harness is or what. So yeah, in there. Make sure you remember where all the hoses go, even the ones that go down. Make sure you remember where all of that goes. And then you want to pop all that off. Be careful, of course. Common sense, it's usually a good idea to crack the hoses loose before you start pulling them off, like with pair of pliers or something. Where are we at here? Should probably be doing that from that side. Grab your pair of pliers and then try to rotate it a bit before you pull it off. And then there's that one there, that one, and then there's a couple more. There's the one over there, and then I feel like there might be even one more yet. You got the wires up there. Anyway, I ended up just leaving the tank on here, like I said, because I couldn't get that wire off, so I just spun it around, put it here. And to take the airbox off, very, very simple deal for mine. Just had two bolts here, one on each side, two 10 mils. So I think a lot of these bikes are different because I've watched a couple of videos and I've noticed a number of things. Like, for one, my stupid bike has the drain plug behind the exhaust. I had to drop the exhaust to get at it, and I managed to break a bolt in the process, so we ended up having to extract that. Yeah, it was just a big pain in the butt. Just a stupid design. Like I said, whoever did that should be fired from life. And of course, with these hoses, or actually first with the intake box, of course, I think that was the only thing holding them on. There was this hose connected to something there as well, or actually that was just pointed down. There was a hose connected up top here, which would be right here. Always make sure you disconnect everything once you take those bolts out. Pretty straightforward. Otherwise, you got to take your clamps off over here, of course. Other side, there we go. Loosen all those off. Got to find them, loosen them. And it came off pretty easy. Popped it backwards, wiggled it out, make sure it doesn't hook in any of these wires, tear any of the wires out or any of the lines. And then of course you're at your carbs, same thing, disconnect all these. This one here, I ended up backing off this nut here, the bottom one. This one didn't really want to spin so much. Oh, I guess it did somewhat. I can adjust it later as necessary, but I mainly did this one. Just remember where these are in case you have to adjust your throttle later. And then, like I said, the carbs came off really easy. Simplest deal I've ever messed with, actually. Same thing again, pulling them out, make sure all the hoses are loose, you're not catching any wires or anything. And then, of course, when you got them on your bench, or my tailgate in this case, pretty straightforward. Hopefully you've cleaned carbs before. If you haven't, not much to it. Of course, you start with these screws here. Sometimes they might be stuck. You might want to wiggle them free a little bit with a flat screwdriver, ideally. And then when you pull them out, you've got what I believe is your, what do they call it, the pilot jet, the main jet, and then you've got your idle jet down there, I think. But I'm not quite sure how these work, because some bikes, you'll find, some of these old bikes, they'll come with a plug like this. So be very careful when you pull off the bolts. You've got a plug there. I'm gonna go back to regular view here now. And that plug actually sits in there, if I'm not mistaken. And I guess we'll zoom out again. Sits right there, and you'll find it is sitting on there. That's the piece that pushes it on there, like that. So you don't want to lose that. You don't want to break that. I've had cases where carbs were so bad that I started cleaning them. I had to scrape gunk out of them, and I ended up scraping this out too. So then I had to reseal it with another plug, or get creative with something that's not going to get eaten by gasoline. So that was interesting. But anyway, you want to make sure, either way, like I said, I don't know how they work, but I make sure that this jet is clean here. This one's clear. And then to pull off your float, you'll see it when you open it up. You'll have this sitting in there, something like that, probably. And then you got to pop this pin out before you can get it off. That can be a pain. If it's been shut for a long time, you might need to get creative, because I ended up having to try to pry it off, pry it out of there with a screwdriver. and a pair of pliers. Actually, we ended up having to, oh, I need to zoom out here, it works better. I had to pry over here with a flat screwdriver and squeeze over here. It took 2 people, squeeze over here with my needle nose pliers at the same time to get that pin out. So yeah, that was a pain. But yeah, you want to make sure your float is good. I actually, if you check out my other video, I try to keep that one short. I think it's a minute long. I guess one of these floats, I think it's actually this one here, they had stuck, I suppose, in some way. I don't know. I'm guessing that's what happened. I've seen it before with bikes. I'm not an expert. I just, you know, I'm an enthusiast. I do this on my own time. And that allows the fuel to flow into the bowl and flow into the cylinders. And then that thing would actually hydrolock. You go out to start it in the morning and it was seized because your cylinder is full of gasoline. So yeah, that's interesting and dangerous. You don't want that. But the worst thing there, probably worse than the hydrolocking, which of course can blow your motor, is you got your oil level there. If that doesn't look like oil in there, it should stick to the glass a little bit. It should not be sloshing around, and it certainly should not be foaming when the engine's running. And if it is, you've probably got a lot of gas saturation fuel. So mine actually was probably 50% gasoline by the time I actually changed that. I just bought that bike, so this is all new. But I ended up draining all the fuel out. I think it had double the capacity it was supposed to, or the oil rather. I opened the drain plug up after I dropped the exhaust and everything. And yeah, I believe that happens because these floats stick and they allow the fuel to flow into the cylinder actually, and then eventually it works its way down to the crankcase. So you don't want that. And otherwise, yeah, you just clean everything, make sure it's all clean. Get you a can of carb cleaner. I don't really trust brake cleaner. I think that might actually mess up seals. You might want to look into that a little bit if you're going to risk that. And then I very carefully used a screwdriver, not this pick tool, that was more so just for pushing the pins out. A flat screwdriver to very carefully pry the old gaskets off, and then you want to clean them up as best as you can. My father recommends actually polishing these on a piece of sandpaper. I'll show you. I don't know if you're a body man like he is. He's an everything man. Certified mechanic, body man, he does it all. He sticks a piece of sandpaper flat on a piece of glass, and then you basically shave, or what's the word? I can think of it in different languages, but not in English right now. But anyhow, yeah, you just basically polish that to make it perfectly straight. I know most of you guys probably won't have a glass table or anything. I just clean them up. I just clean them up a little bit, and then I've never had any issues. I don't go as far as what Dad does. And then the gasket, like I said, if you feel you can't take it off without damaging it, leave it. You do not want to risk tearing it unless you have new ones. Of course, I would always recommend replacing the gaskets, but in this case, you know, this cheap old $500 motorcycle here, I am just going to reuse the old gaskets. So take a little bit of grease, and then I coat both sides if I can get it off. If not, then of course you'll just coat the one side. And of course, another thing, when you're taking this off, if you have to use a screwdriver, be very, very careful, because there's a very good chance you're going to tear that gasket if you're not careful. So I would definitely watch that when you're working on that. Be very, very careful with that, because otherwise you are going to end up tearing your gasket. I've done that before. And at that point, the only thing I've ever done, if I don't have a new one, is just get creative with good silicone. Permatex Right Stuff, I think, is probably the only thing that I might even trust at that point. But yeah, at that point you might need new gaskets, because I think making a gasket for this would be pretty tough to do. But anyway, again, you want to pull your little float out there, and you can use needle nose pliers for that. This one comes out pretty easy, actually, not much to it. You just want to make sure that's all loose and clean, and that little button's pushing in as it should. And then, yeah, of course, make sure you put everything back the way it was. Always watch, make sure how you're taking it apart. I think the grease kind of helps seal, as well as maybe soften the gasket a little bit to make it seal better. And when you tighten the bowls back up, you don't have to be crazy with them. Just make sure you got your jets all out. Sometimes I unscrew this one. I couldn't unscrew the one on the bottom there, but it was clear. I blasted compressed air through it, so that one should be good. And yeah, like I said, take the jet out, make sure it's all clear. I'm not sure what this is, but yeah, you just want to make sure everything's clear. I don't think you even need to take the top off for the diaphragm to clean them. I never have, or not usually anyway. But again, I'm not an expert. I'm just, you know, trying to give you guys a quick little rundown in case you're completely new to it and you have any questions. And of course, once you're done with all this, ideally, you need to synchronize your carbs, which frankly, I'm not even quite sure how to do with these. So yeah, typically you've got adjustment screws, so you can see up here. Are we good down here? Yeah, I think we are. See your screws right there? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those would be your I guess, sync screws. I forget what they call them. Air fuel screws, maybe? and those would be the ones you would use to synchronize. Now, the only way to properly do that would be a set of vacuum gauges. Typically there's an air port or something that you can put your hoses on to fine-tune your carbs. I'm not sure where it is on this one, so I guess I'm kind of useless right now with this video. But yeah, somehow there's typically a way to put vacuum hoses on. It might even be in your runners over there. But that is it. If you found they were way out of sync, then you might run like crap. If you had to do it manually, then maybe I'd say adjust them till they all kind of run good and run over them again if you need to. That's the best way I could think to do it at that point. But anyway, I just figured I'd make a quick video here. Not particularly helpful maybe, but maybe if there's even one person that gets some help out of this video, then my mission is complete. Hey, if you guys have any questions, ask. Again, one of the easiest bikes I've ever worked on. Definitely not any V65 Magna, that's for sure. And as always, may God bless you.